Hey guys, what's going on? So I wanted to revisit the Blight build this season. All the talk about how Shadow was absolutely nerfed to the ground is pretty accurate. But that being said, Ebonpiercer itself still performing marginally well. Can farm T7s pretty good. Really tanky with the right setup. I'm still working around as far as some of the damage side of it, but I'm pretty happy with where it is. I did log in as soon as the season started into the Eternal character with no changes from last season's gear. Uh, so again, I didn't even have the fully capped new Ebonpiercer um, with the old stats and everything, and I was still able to break 1 billion damage dot ticks during stagger windows. So the damage is still there. It's nowhere near what it was. It's about half of the damage we were doing. But we do have some new tools to play with this season. Um, Overall, the build itself was hit pretty hard, but when it was performing at the level it was last season, it's still able to perform higher than a lot of our other builds do. This is actually a good bit more damage than minions do right now. Of course, it's kind of on par with Sever at the moment. It's not going to catch up to Surge or Bone Spirit, but if you enjoy the gameplay, if you enjoyed the Ebonpiercer build, you're perfectly fine with doing this. You're going to be able to farm T7s. T8s, I ran a couple of those. It was a little rougher, but again, I'm not in the current gear, or I'm in the current gear that I have, which I'll show you here in just a second. And it's nowhere near in-game gear. It's some 8 of 12 gears. I do have a couple of the pieces are 12 of 12, but most of it is just 8 of 12. Don't have the greatest affixes on everything, but it's at least serviceable to get where we are. I don't even have the 93.5 attack speed breakpoint. So there's still some room for improvement with the build, but I am pretty happy with the way it turned out considering where we are with the changes that were made to Shadow. Now, a couple quick things to note. Wither is still not capped, even though the tooltip says it was, and they said it was in the patch notes. It is not capped. Don't know how that slipped through, but it did. And that's okay. It'll probably get fixed, but in the meantime, let's have some fun with it. So this build still is able to perform. But one thing I wanted to talk about before we get into, I'll show you the build and everything, was the Ebonpiercer amulet itself and the changes to that item. So one of the biggest changes that was brought about in this season was the unique changes. And the Ebonpiercer, to me, really didn't make a lot of sense with what they did with these changes. Removing the DR is a, whatever. We can catch the DR back up. We've got easy access to the new materials, which is absolutely fantastic, and I actually put it on this build. We have access to Hardened Bones and Shaco and other DR sources, but that in itself was not as big of a deal as some of the other changes. The most impactful change, though, was the losing of the essence cost reduction. That's what really drove this build into its tier last season. So losing that really hurt. But with the changes to Starless, we can also fit that now in, and we can lose, or we won't worry about losing the stacks on it as we use our other skills. We have the attack speed on it now, and it's a 50 multi, so it's pretty strong. The other changes to Ebonpiercer really just don't make sense to me. The Gloom, I love that actually. I think it's fine that we've got Gloom. We proc that nonstop. But adding Blight and Chance for Blight to projectiles to cast twice really don't make sense for this build. Through multiple testings last season, we proved that Blight doesn't impact the damage of the Ebonpiercer bolts whatsoever. And if you watch my other Ebonpiercer videos, 95% of the damage actually comes from the amulet and not Blight itself. Blight is just a vessel to get us able to use the amulet. And then the second thing is the chance for Blight projectiles to cast twice. The projectiles themselves do not cast twice. People may, you may have seen some videos of people showing you that it does cast twice. But what you're actually seeing is the bolts catching up to the double cast of Blight itself. So there aren't actually double cast of the projectiles. You're just getting a small Blight bolt in front of another Blight bolt that has the projectiles with it. So the amulet itself really just doesn't make sense now. All the changes they made to it just do not fit whatsoever with the amulet. And if you're playing an Ebonpiercer build, that's what you're looking for. So that being said, I'll let you finish watching the rest of this T7 run, and then we'll get into the gear and the aspects and the Paragon and skills. All right, for the gear itself, we have slipped back into using the Shaco. The reason we're using this is going to be primarily for the cooldown reduction. You can get a better triple crit on this to help your cooldown even more. I actually was using my triple crit GA CDR last night, and the Bone Storm was up 100% of the time. It was very nice. But it's still a very good uptime on your Bone Storm, and of course from last year's testing, I did temper in the Bone Storm duration on the weapon to keep the Bone Storm up. For your chest slot, one of the big changes is because we're using Starless, we don't need as much essence per second, so it's not a negative to lose our essence per second on our chest, because we really don't benefit from other things on the chest. Sure, we benefit from the int and the max life, but being able to raise our resistances as well as get a substantial amount of DR, and then it doesn't hurt to have those extra bolts going from materials itself because of how much we are casting. So if you are not able to have materials yet, you can slot in our old setup with having the int, max life, and essence per second with your corpse tendrils and your max life, and you'd use hardened bones on this piece. For your gloves, I hadn't rolled this yet. That's going to be shadow damage over time, or either it might just be HP, so I can fit in more topazes. But you still want your int and attack speed, and the same as last time, you want to crit those attack speeds. And if you can get a GA one, it'd be much more beneficial for you. And because we do have Shielding Storm, you are using Conceited for the extra multiplier from having a barrier. Here's our Shielding Storm on our pants. Depending on what you're using for your helmet, you don't need the armor roll. You may not need it at all. So that being said, I currently have int max life, and the armor's on there, and we are using Shielding Storm on it. For the boots, we're still using Concussive Strikes, because it's a 20% multi, especially on bosses when they get staggered. And bosses are the only thing that ever slows this build down. It's the only thing that slowed the build down before. So we do want that extra stagger damage. Same thing as last time. Either int and max life or movement speed, and then essence per second on this. Again, keeping up the lucky hit chance to stun on that. For your weapon, one of the things that I'm still testing, and I need to get another one without the RCR and test it a little bit more to see how that works with Starless. However, I did slot in Great Feast, and because of the constant casting, it did drain a little bit more than I wanted it to, so I'm just slotting in Aspect of the Damned. You could put Great Feast back on your gloves instead of Conceited because it is a higher multi. For your amulet, of course, we're using this. Same applies as last season. You want the highest damage roll possible as you can on your actual aspect. And then you want for this one, you're definitely going to want your Gloom and your Reaper's Pursuit to be the focuses. Reaper's Pursuit is your movement speed, so it's not that big of a deal, but you absolutely want as high of Gloom as you can. For your ring, you want, of course, the attack speed, and I did put in a resource cost reduction here. Same as last time, we're using the tempers for resource gen and shadow damage over time. I didn't want to roll this ring yet to roll the damage off because I might use this somewhere else. But you would definitely want int attack speed and the resource cost reduction or your shadow damage over time here. The second ring we're using Starless. I crit core, but I wasn't re-rolling this at the time. But you definitely want your attack speed to be your focus here. The other ones don't matter. We don't care about crit strike. The lucky hit chance is really good for keeping up your abhorrent decrepify refreshes. So that's another one you could utilize. But the other two stats, core and crit strike, we just don't care about. All right, for your skills, it's exactly like last time. We're running Reap to get into Blight. We just have 1 into Blight because, again, we don't care about the damage. Running it down to get your Supernatural for your multi. 1 into Energy, we don't care about that, but 3 into your Imperfectly Balanced because after testing, we proved last season that the increase from this, however, does, even though it doesn't count as a core and Blight itself doesn't do much damage, the projectiles themselves do. 3 into Hued Flesh, we want a huge amount of corpses going so we can keep our Flesh Eater and our Fueled by Death going. Corpse Explosion down to BC, the Blighted Corpse Explosion for the constant shadow damage, also helping proc our Shadow Blight. 1 into Grim Harvest, we really don't care about that, our Essence is fine. 3 into Fueled by Death. 1 into Blood Mist, going down to Ghastly for a Corpse Gen to start a fight. 3 into Death's Embrace, 3 into Death's Approach. 3 into Amplified Damage, 1 into Decrepify, going down to Abhorrent for our CDR. I think it's comical how much Reaper's Pursuit we have, but excuse me. I did drop 2 in Reaper's Pursuit. I like moving fast, especially in hordes. 3 into Gloom, 3 into Terror, 1 into Crippling Darkness. That also gives us the additional stagger chances. 1 into Corpse Tendrils, going down to Plagued for our Vulnerable application. 3 into Necrotic. We are getting so many corpses with this build with our Hued Flesh and our amount of times we're hitting. We're getting a massive amount of corpses, so our Fortify is a massive generation on this build. 3 into Standalone for more DR. 3 into Memento Mori for our sack bonuses. 1 into Bone Storm. 1 into Prime. We don't care about crit strike chance, so we do not take Supreme. And then we're taking Shadow Blight. Book of the Dead, we're sacrificing Reapers for the shadow damage. Skeletal Mages for our vulnerable. And Blood for the additional HP. One other change you can make, if you wanted to slot in Sacrificial here, that'd be a great pickup instead of Conceited. And then finally for our Paragon, this is the exact same Paragon board as last year. This is the only thing that I'm considering changing, potentially throwing on Lucky Hit Chance to Vuln onto the glove slot, and picking up Blood Orb Tendrils so that we can fit in the Blood Begets Blood board for the additional 1.5 multi. But that being said, I will run through it quick. We got our start board with Gravekeeper. Up next, we have our Wither board, and of course, we do take it. And as I mentioned in the earlier in the video, this is not capped, even though it says it is. The tooltip's wrong. We know it's probably going to get fixed, but until it does, abuse it. We have Amplify in the Wither board. Over here, we have Scent of Death with Sacrificial. Abyssal goes in our Bone Graft board. In our Bloodbath board, we have Control. Flesh Eater board, we have Scourge. In our Hulking Monstrosity, we have Exploit. So that's the build. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you're playing around with it yourself or you're going to give this a shot, let me know. We can talk about it, see if we can improve it. I do think there still is potential for more damage. Again, my gear is not the greatest. I got some cool looking pieces, but not necessarily the right stats. So, like I said on the Eternal build that I have, I was still able to break 1 billion. While that's not amazing damage, it keeps up with a lot of our other builds and surpasses quite a few as well. So, thanks for watching. Catch y'all next time.